Hello everybody. Sorry, I'm just still setting up. I'll be there in just a second. How is everyone doing? In the meantime, let's see. Might have spammed my WIP forums. Oh, I've just taken like the two that were in there, like the two images. I'm not gonna be adding anything like during the stream because that gets too chaotic. Let me just get this all set up and then we should be good to go. You missed the epic music at the beginning of the stream. Oh yeah, I think I keep the epic music for my Friday stream, where we go into like full medieval mode. Let's see, Casper. And who are we missing? Alan. Alan's doing a building. Got Nick in the chat. We got Jesse. Hi Jesse. I don't think I've seen you before. Welcome. We got Aladdin. We got Alan. We got Maddie. We got Vibhu. Mishla, we've got round 1 in the chat. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Nearly set up. Oh, it's the wrong image. And then Jesse. Yeah, I guess you're not totally new. I've definitely seen your work before, Jesse. Just didn't ring a bell as I was setting it up. Now it does. Okay. I think we're nearly there. Did I miss any images? Just want to make sure we got everything. Let's add one in here. Okay. Oh, hi. Well, we're back at this stuff again. Let's refresh this. That goes to the wrong screen. This one. That's what we need. There we go. You know, we're getting there. Not like I've been doing this for a while or anything like that. Okay, let's save all these out. Just in case. Hello? Thank you. Got a whole bunch of people today. Probably gonna have to be a little bit quicker than I've been last time around. That's fine. Love the stuff you guys put out. Really helpful channel. Oh, that's awesome. Joined a bit back. First time on the feedback though. Nice. Man, I couldn't figure out why material functions are so heavy, especially when using virtual textures. Is there a way to optimize it? No idea. No idea, Aladdin. That would be one to figure out yourself. Because honestly, on the virtual texture side, I don't really have an idea. But there's no reason why material functions should be heavier than anything else, right? But yeah, virtual textures have been, I don't know, kind of been wonky when I've been using them. So good luck and have fun. Okay, let's see. Lots of pizza to go over today. Yes. Nice to see everyone's work from the community. Yeah, it is. Definitely is. Okay, let's have a look. What's the update frequency on this again? Sort by most recently active. Okay, cool. So, I mean, it doesn't matter that much. I'm probably just gonna start it like this, honestly. So, just in case you're wondering, just in case this is new to you, feel free to jump in with any feedback yourselves, and we can add it to like the little overpaint that I'm gonna do. Feel free to shout out any comments, any ideas, or if you have any questions for what I'm saying, feel free to bring all that stuff up. Since we have a lot of people, I'm gonna jump straight in. So we're gonna start with Jesse. Hi all, first time posting here, so I'm hoping the format is correct. Let's have a look. I'm working on... Oh yeah, the format is correct, Jesse. Don't worry about that at all. I'm working on this forest scene inspired by my local woodlands with a light sci-fi narrative. This being the individual taking the shots renders belongs to a space travel company that is pushing to study old planets. Okay, some left with disgruntled residents, hence the no humans. Oh man. Yeah, okay, interesting. It's also my excuse to enjoy making a ton of foliage and getting better at photo scanning. I'm mainly looking for feedback on the composition and the shot, plus lighting for exteriors, or if any of the foliage looks odd. Okay, cool. Let's jump in. First what I'll say, without knowing the context of that story is not gonna be... It's not gonna be understood by a lot of people, I think. Just as like a gut feeling, you know? Because you're trying to add a lot. And it's not an easy thing to say either, you know? But yeah, you didn't really want any feedback on that, so I'm just gonna keep it light. So, story is quite complex. Let's start there, right? Like, because from what I can tell here, like there is something going on, right? Like no humans, that means that there's something alien going on. But I don't know. You know, it's like, it's a normal bike. There's like a thing on the floor, which I don't know really what the significance of is. You know, I don't have any context, right? Like I don't know what this is supposed to signify. And then also like you have like way markers here. But they're also like in the middle of the woods. They kind of feel a little bit out of place. So what I can kind of feel at this point, right, is that this is a place that has been taken over by nature, so it has like a lot of history to it. Or like maybe aliens have taken over and like no humans occupy this space anymore. Like that's kind of where I'm going, because nature is kind of taking over, right? Because this is like, I don't know, some signature that would be very common to like a more residential place, right? Rather than in the middle of the forest. So that kind of feels a little bit off. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna say about the story. So you're mainly looking for feedback on the composition of the shot and lighting of the exterior. If any foliage looks off. So yeah, I think this shot is really cool, right? Because we can actually see like some of the stuff that is happening. We can actually feast on like the details, right? What you could take into account is for composition. A stereotypical thing to do is to put the focal point like off center. So that it's not just like smack in the middle of the frame. There's something visually pleasing about having things like slightly off center, right? So you could have the same framing, but then have the bike here, and then have the rest of the forest, like, surrounding it. And you would, like, the way that you would do that is just, like, divide your frame into, like, 3 equal parts. And then you would ideally have your most important stuff, like, on the convergence of those points, right? That's how, like, the rule of thirds work. And also you can apply this to like a bunch of stuff, right? Like your horizon line, you should try to never put that in the middle, but have it either like 30% or like 60 or 70%, right? So that it's never in the middle of something. Yeah, the framing itself is nice. I think you're trying to do something interesting with the frame itself, right? With like the photography frame. You can do something really interesting with that. But I feel if you're going that way, you kind of need to sell it all the way through. Right? And that means maybe looking at an aspect ratio that maybe fits more. I don't think stuff like this would be on like a film reel like this. I might be wrong. And then also try to embed like your links into the fonts as well. Like try to actually make it a part of like the film reel. I think most film reels have like some stuff on here, right? Like maybe it's the branding of like the film reel that they have on there. Again, might be mistaken because it's so old, right? But maybe you could incorporate some of that stuff in there as well. Yeah. Also, again, I know that I come back to the story, but like if you're doing this film reel approach, right? Then you're kind of setting up that this is like another person that kind of is investigating like this abduction. Right? That's kind of what I'm getting from it. So yeah, maybe try to tie that into the story a little bit more. Yeah, it definitely makes it more unique, right? Definitely makes it more unique and interesting. It's just you need to tie most of the pieces together, right? I gotta say though, I do like the lighting though. Like the lighting here was quite nice, especially when you're zoomed in, right? Because this feels like a very finished and well lit scene. Like there's a lot of contrast. Like you're getting a nice focal point because that's where you put like the main emphasis of the light. So I really like this shot. Also like the aging of the film, right? Where you have like this sort of aging on the film. Actually does a really good job of adding in some extra color complexity where you wouldn't really have that if you didn't have that aging on the film. So actually that's like a happy accident that happened there, which is really cool. I think what you need to do is kind of implement some of the same thinking that you're doing here, and apply some of the scattering of light like in the rest of your scene, but keep, because you have like 2 or maybe like more like sunbeams lighting up this section, right? Which looks really nice. But like the rest of it is kind of dark, so you could have some of those fake light beams just scatter here, but have them at like 50% opacity or something like that. right? Or like at 50% the strength of the main light, so that because you don't want to lose the focus that you have on your main focal point. You don't want to destroy that, right? So trying to do something more like this in the rest of your scene is gonna help make it feel more like it's the same kind of mood, right? Like the light breaking through the whole scene. And then also it's gonna give it more depth as well. If you do that, if you scatter it a little bit across the scene. That looks really nice. I do have to say, in contrast to that, I'm totally not a fan of, I think the night lighting. But it kind of feels, I don't know, is it night or is it like a weird kind of film? I'm trying to think, right? Because you kind of have, what is it? Like you have these shots with like fluorescent paint or something like that, right? That, or like bioluminescent paint or whatever. But I just don't think that the overly blue, like the saturated blue, really gives like a nice feeling. Like it's a bit too, yeah, just a bit too blue. Because this is always a thing, right? You might be going for something really cool. Oh, I tried to do a knife variant with mini post-processing, but it didn't come out well. Okay, cool. Because I was actually thinking that you were doing some sort of like old, like film reel inspired stuff where they had like a special lens or like something like that on it, right? And I thought that could be cool, but then what I was gonna say is that you have to be careful with some of that stuff, because if you go for very niche things and the person that's looking at the art doesn't understand that you're going for that niche thing, then you going for a niche thing has kind of lost like any sort of resemblance, right? Like if you can't relate it somehow, if the person kind of needs to know about like this special lens that captures the light in a special way, and if you're doing that, then you might as well not do it, because it needs to be approachable, right? So I would still go for generic night. Quote unquote generic night, right? So yeah, that would be my like 2 cents on that lighting scenario. Yeah, I think what you could do is work in different sub levels and have a level that is like your day scene, right? And then have one that is your night scene. And then you could approach it in like a totally different way, put different lights and blah blah blah, instead of only trying to force it in with post-processing, right? Because I mean, there is some story potential, right? Like, again, everything comes back to story, right? Because if you're doing like a night scene, and if you wanna make the story more sense, like if you wanna add like more sense to it, then you could maybe do something where you see like lights in the distance. Resembling a search party. So you could have like flashlights in the distance, kind of looking for a kid that might be abducted. Like if that is like a story that you want to tell, right? That could be an interesting story to tell, just with lighting, right? And like relighting your scene. So you could have like the day variant where, I don't know, maybe like police is investigating it, or maybe no one has discovered it yet, but then during the night they start like a search party or something like that. Could be very interesting. But yeah, that depends on what story you want to tell, right? I don't want to deviate it too much. I think it's definitely is definitely worth thinking about. Like how you can simplify the story that you wanted to tell, right? Because that's at the core of this, I think. Maybe add a campfire for the night scene or something like that to add some warm tone in. Catch the eye more. Yeah. Again, that depends on the story, right? Like if it's like a bunch of kids that kind of went into the middle of the woods and they're kind of doing like a camping survival trip, then that would make sense. So I can definitely see that. That's a good idea. So yeah, I would say, what is like the recap here, right? So I guess we kind of have it here, right? So the story is quite complex. Night scene needs like a relight. And then, oh yeah, the third one that we actually haven't discussed yet is the foliage. So yeah, most of the foliage looks really nice though. You know, I like this mossy stuff that's growing on top of the stones. If I would get nitpicky, look, you can definitely embed it more where you have like a green mossy layer and then you have like the actual geometry on top of it, right? So blend moss together. But the moss itself looks really nice. And then all this small stuff looks really nice as well. I think the only thing that's kind of standing out to me now is just the grass, right? Like the grass, it's like someone just received like a buzz cut. It's like just really uniform. And I think the grass needs some variation. Yeah, so the grass needs some variation. And that's you can both ways, right? Like you can bind them in two ways where there's a node in Unreal called speed tree color variation. And you basically just put your base color in and just have a color coming out. You plug that straight in and you have like a way to like add subtle variation. Make it very subtle though, because sometimes that node goes crazy and it looks absolutely ridiculous. The next thing is just in terms of scale, right? Like try to repaint or reapply the settings with like a higher scale variation. And also have smaller patches, right? Where you can have like smaller patches near the edges or around the tree. Right, and around some of the stones, you could have like smaller patches like sticking out. And then they would kind of build up towards the bigger ones. Right, so you're kind of building in like small, medium, and large. That's always what you're trying to do. Like you're trying to build a transition between different layers. That's always the way that I looked at it. And that's literally just painting with different sizes and scales and just making like nice little patches, you know? Yeah. That's what I would say. Grass variation. And then grass clustering. Oh, I use the landscape material to generate the majority of grass. We'll definitely look into getting the shader to add more variation, or might need to paint it in. Undo the buzz cut. Yeah, so on that note, right, like that landscape material trick is very good. You can build in like a ton of procedural variation as well. You could have the same instances that are like smaller as well to create more variation. But I think what you said, like especially around the focal point, right? And you can even look at the latest Megascan demo that they did, is the shots that were really important were still made by hand, right? Even if they have like all these like elaborate procedural setups that work kick-ass, like they still go in and like hand alter like a couple of things, like a lot of it. And you could do the same thing too, right? Like, or I would advise you to do the same thing where all this stuff, right? Like, that's gonna be like in the forefront. So I would handcraft that. Like really place like, go in and paint like little small patches of grass, right? And make it look like really nice. Add some random rotation and make it look real nice. Instead of only relying on like the procedural stuff. Dark Chemist is saying the aesthetic of the daytime reminds me of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Yeah, exactly. I think the colors work really nice. Very, very nice atmosphere to it already. And Sarah is saying the scene is looking so interesting. Can't wait to see the final product. Yes, me too. Yeah, Jesse. I'm also looking forward to the final result. I'm really curious what you're gonna do with the story, so keep me up to date. Yeah, and then we're gonna jump straight on to the next person. Thank you so much for putting up your work, Jesse. Thank you for being a part of WIP Wednesday. And looking forward to the next update. Next up, we got Eloy with a small update. Let's see. So Eloy has been working on texture work, improved the floor materials. There's basically like 8 what is it, 8 pictures in there, but I only took the 2. Oh, sorry, it just has like a quick update, because I like where the destruction is going here. Like the destruction and like the layering that you're getting, right? This is starting to look real nice. Especially with the blending, right? Like the blending of the tileable with like the broken tiles. Like it's starting to look like really seamless. You know, so that's like a really great job. You can see it here, right? Like it's hard to tell to a certain degree where like the tileable begins and where like the meshes and where the meshes come in. So that's looking real nice. And especially with final lighting and all that kind of stuff on top of it, right? You're barely gonna see that. So this is looking real nice. Awesome progress. I don't think, let me make sure. I don't think Eloy asked for any feedback. I still gotta break some more rocks. I'm gonna end up mad. So many rocks. I'm feeling optimistic about this piece, but I still got a long way ahead. Next thing I'm focusing will be the roof. Yeah. Well, look, it is. That's what I said in the beginning, right? Like destruction is something that we always underestimate because it can get quite complex to make it look really good. But just keep doing what you're doing. The stuff that I'm seeing here looks really nice. Keep putting in those details. Like that attention to detail is gonna be killer. But yeah, I like what I'm seeing. So thank you so much for sharing it. And looking forward to the next update. Awesome job so far. Cool. Next up, from rapid fire almost. Where is Alan? Let's have a look. Oh, before we move on, Jesse is saying, love that edgeware, and those are some beautiful rocks and stones. Yeah, like the stuff that's seen here, like the thing that I like is that it meshes together, right? Like it all fits together. Like it becomes really hard to see where one thing ends and one one thing begins, right? It's awesome. Keep that up. Keep paying attention to those details, and you're gonna be good. Okay, let's have a look at Alan's work. This is my environment I just finished blocking out. It is based on a concept image that was made by Midjourney. Okay. I'm thinking about adding a few more models to it. Fire escapes, light poles, mesh decals, and brick floater geo. Attached below are the first screenshots of the project. We'll love some feedback on the project overall. More specifically, I would love to hear some different ideas or approaches. What should I be looking out for, and some general advice. Let me have a look. So we got the concept. Yeah, some general advice. Let's have a look. See what we can come up with. I would already start with only focusing on what you can see, right? Because I know that you have 2 shots in there that have like the what is it? Like the fire escape on the roof, right? I would honestly not do that. Like, not at this point. I would just ignore that fire escape. And just focus on like the main image. Because this is already like a pretty big project, right? Especially, I don't know if you're only going to do this one building or if you're going to do like the other buildings as well. Let me bring up the concept as well. Let's get some context. I have been debating on that. I'm gonna solve your debate. Don't do it. Just focus on the one building and make it look kick-ass instead of trying to do like all the buildings and everything. I would honestly... Oh, what is that problem? Damn. There's a really, really good example on that. From like an art studio, I think. Let's see. It's probably gonna come up as first thing. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So look at this. Let's have a look at this beauty as an example. Right? Yep, a diorama. Route 1 is saying the exact same thing. Do something like this, and you have a winner, because that scale that you have, or that, yeah, just the scope and the scale of your environment doesn't matter. Like, you're not really showing anything else if you already make like one good house, and then you just spread them around to make like, I don't know, the rest of the street, right? Just focus on making that one house look really good, add as much character into it as possible, and just make it into a diorama. That would be my advice. So like, what I would focus on is... What is it? What's the building that you currently got blocked out? Oh, and also look at real world ref, right? Because I'm kind of already seeing like, what is this supposed to be? You know, like there's like a weird attachment thing that's not supposed to be there. But I would definitely just focus on, you know, you got the sidewalks. You got the sidewalks. You got like all the interesting buildings. I would probably build, or like put some of the interesting stuff that we can see here, right? Like the light poles. I would include that in. Right? So you would have like one light pole here, maybe like another light pole here at the back end. Right? And then see how you can push this. Right? Like I know we're going there again. What's the story? Right? And again, the reason why I hammer on it so hard is because once you know what the story is, or what the thing is that you wanna make, like you can easily just go back to it and look at like inspiration that's gonna help you, right? Because what I'm seeing here, like it could be very interesting to kind of just have like a city block that is, it's post-apocalyptic. It's in the middle of, what's the name? It's not spring. It's fall, right? Because then you get like all the nice colors that we're seeing here. So, fall, abandoned. Fall, abandoned. I mean, it doesn't need to be that much more, right? You can add onto it if you wanted to. But like with those two, like fall is going to give you the colors. And abandoned is going to give you like a lot of inspiration for meshes. Because I'll tell you, like it's very easy to make a building modular, but it's not easy to make a modular building look really good. That's the tricky part, right? And that's also where this project comes in and just knocks it out of the park. Right? Because this is a modular building. It's made with modular pieces, but it is a really interesting modular building. Because it has like an interesting silhouette. There's like a bunch of stuff that got added on top of it to make it look more interesting. And to make your environment look good, you kind of need to look for inspiration to make it look more interesting. Right? Because like that keyword abandoned is like, okay, so is it boarded up? Are people still living there? Right? And like, just ask yourself like a whole bunch of these questions, and all these questions are like points where you can extract knowledge from. Because you could say, oh, people are still living there. Cool. Then why is it abandoned? Did they turn that into like their own self-sustainable place somehow? Right? Like how are they managing to get food and water? Do they only use it as like a place for shelter and then they just go out on the hunt? Or do they actually have some sort of farming setup on top of the roof or something like that, right? Like there's a whole bunch of different things that you can go into, and that can inform like what you're gonna do with the building itself. Right? So yeah, that would be some of my general advice. I think the main thing here is modular is easy, but good, like interesting modular is hard, right? So focus on what you can do, like adding layers on top of it. That's where I would put most of my time. Because I mean, it's not a secret, right? Like it's relatively easy to make, or these buildings, like there's a reason why they've been depicted in so many games, right? It's because it's very easy to distill them in a package that you can recolor and like change the trims on, and it looks completely different. So it has like modularity built into it. But yeah, still need to make it interesting as well. And if you wanna, I mean, it's totally up to you, right? It's your canvas. You can keep it super realistic, and you can have it as like, hey, look, like this is not necessarily abandoned. It's just, it's like in a disheveled area, right? But like there's still a shop there, and the shop owner is trying to keep the shop open. Or you could go the other way, where this is like completely turned into like an HQ of like a gang, post-apocalyptic style, right? You could go both ways. Yep. Bulwarp is actually talking about something that could be interesting to look into, is edge decals. So those would actually be like little strips of like damage that you can add onto the corners of your meshes as decals and make it look like different than just the base stuff. That would be cool. Yeah, but that's what I would do, is just cut out like all the fluff, right? And focus on making this thing look real interesting. That's what I would do. Yep, I'm just kind of looking at the proportions and all that stuff too. Yeah. Oh, more specifically, I would like to hear some different ideas and approaches, what I should be looking out for, and some general advice. Yeah, what I mean, it's gonna be more straightforward than it was before, right? Because we're only trying to make like the one building now. So you can just focus on making the modules look really good, and then you would add on top of it with like decals, just normal decals, not necessarily like the corner decals or the edge decals that we were talking about before. You just have like some leakage, right? Also add like a bunch of like rain pipes, like continue them all the way up. Like those little things, they always add a lot to buildings, so don't forget about them. And then look at how you can make this more interesting, right? I think the bottom floor is going to look pretty interesting. But maybe look at opportunities, right? Like maybe what you could do is have... Maybe this is part of an alley. Right? So this is like the front. And then the side entrance is the alley, where you have like those stereotypical like stairs coming down, right? Like that are attached to like the sides of the building. And then this alley could be like the side entrance to the shop or the restaurant, and there's like a bin there. Right? And maybe there's like some garbage next to the bin. Try to make it more interesting than it is now. I mean, you could also just do this, right? Have like a corner shop kind of setup. And then maybe you could add like a little outside sitting area or something like that. Think about it. It's your thing, right? So it's your canvas. Paint it however you want it to. I'm thinking about adding a few more modules to it. Fire escapes, light poles, mesh decals, brick floater geo. Yeah, I think that was my general advice. I think I mainly want to steer you away from like doing the whole thing. Just make it small and make it really polished rather than big and unpolished. Like, it's highly likely that it will not be the same kind of quality as if you're going for smaller. So I hope that helped, Alan. So, yeah. Small and polished. That's my little recap here. So number 1 is definitely small and polished. Number 2 is definitely add story. Right? What are you going to do with it? Like, what is this location? Or who is it serving? Or who's living there? Who's not living there? And then number 3 is... yeah. The interesting modular part, right? Trying to push the polish. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Thank you so much for putting up your work, Alan. Appreciate it. And good luck. If there's any other questions, just let me know. And we will discuss them. And if not, see you next week, right? Like, I'm curious to keep up with this. I mean, the colors are definitely interesting. You know, like, I would definitely go with, like, it's an interesting palette to work with, like the fall, right? It has a very strong identity. So, could be very interesting to work with something like that. Okay, thank you, Alan. Next up, we go to Mishla. Where is your thread? Here we go. So I just picked the one... oh no, didn't I pick more images? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. Got this image here as well. Nice. Oh, yeah. I'm liking what I'm seeing here. Thinking outside of the box with the trim sheets. Like what I see, where we have... it's small stuff, but I like it. Like where you have like this little split, and then the geo kind of comes just a little bit down. Like that. It's a cool little area. I think you can easily still add like a rim to this stuff, right? Maybe you're still working on that or not. Just like an inner border, right? Kind of the same as here. Yeah, overall, I really like what I'm seeing. You know? Very nice details over here. Nice silhouette going on. Yeah, I like where this is going. It's looking nice. I think the same can be reflected here, right? Yeah, these things look pretty nice as well. Yeah, this is coming along nicely. Let's see. 3 trim sheets, 1 for the storefronts, 1 for the metal and other elements, and 1 for the windows. Yep, that's good. Got some ornate pieces in there as well. Let me actually bring this up here so that we can look at it together. So that's the main trim sheet. Got like the metal trim sheet, and then this is a storefront trim sheet, right? It's interesting. Where's that section being used? Doesn't matter. Like the main thing what stood out to me here is that half of it is just a tileable, right? Nothing really wrong with that. You can use that, right? Like you're kind of doing like a hybrid thing if you definitely need that much space, right? There's nothing really wrong with it. Just maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some other opportunities and you can just replace that with a tileable instead. Potentially. It depends on your use case. Also started the first Houdini tool I wanted to make. I use it for window creations. The idea is you can just quickly make it in Houdini together with automatic trimming and then use it in Unreal. I would like to mostly ask for general feedback. Jeez. As well as what should be my priority right now. I remember what you said about adding curves and irregularities to the model. I just didn't get to it yet. It's all good. Okay, so main question is where you should focus your attention now. I mean, it's not a difficult thing, right? Like keep doing what you're doing. Focus on the buildings. Buildings in the back, right? Like all the bigger chunks. One more general way to look at it is kind of looking at what takes up the most screen space. Focusing on that and then moving on to what takes up the next most screen space and kind of do that in phases, right? You don't want to, well, at least I don't. I don't like to work on one thing, make it look really good and then move on to the next thing and make it really good because I like seeing like the whole scene progress, right? So I kind of do that in phases. Where at that point I would just focus on the buildings now. And then let's see. One specific question, how would you approach making the sidewalk and the cloth piece from the restaurant? Oh, for all the assets, they all fit on the trim sheet, but it doesn't make sense for me to use the same approach on the sidewalk and the cloth. Yeah, let's have a look. We don't really have any references here necessarily, right? But that's all right. Yeah, because the way that I would approach it is a split between the two things, right? Like you would have like the curb. The curb you could potentially do unique, where you have like, I don't know, like a couple of sections of curb and then you just stack them together, right? To make like the whole curb, depending on how close you're gonna get and what you're looking for. Or you could also just use like, again, a trim sheet, right? For the actual sidewalk, I would just use tileable. I would use a generic tileable that has like some concrete on it and then just add decals on top of it to make it look nice. That's what I would do. Maddie is also commenting on the trim sheet that we were talking about before. Maybe you could add another trim at the bottom for that sheet. Yeah, exactly. Fill it up with something else instead. Could definitely be an idea. But that's how I would approach the curb and the sidewalk. Because from the looks of it, from my quick glances at some ref, the curb is kind of patchy sometimes, right? where... Let's have a look. I'm especially looking at something like this, right? Where you just look for like the most common thing in that picture. Which is probably gonna be like this. This like slabbed concrete material. Right? So that would be like my tileable. And then what I would do is make like a sheet of just decals that I can add on top of it. And those decals could be like, I don't know, these shinier edges. Maybe some potholes or something like that. And then also just like a different concrete strip or something like that, right? And that would then go into like a decal sheet. Where it's just basically like an atlas, right? And I just cut out like bits of meshes, add a little bit of geometry, and then just place them on top of the thing. For some smaller stuff like these shinier trims, you would probably use deferred decals. For some of the other stuff, you would probably have like a little bit of geometry, right? So that you can have like a little bit more volume to it. That's the way that I would approach it. I was actually doing some experiments with that today for one of the projects that we're working on, so pretty cool. Yeah, it's going on nice though. Little heart over here, like it. Buildings, and then we got sidewalks, and then the third one we're going to be focusing on the cloth, right? The cloth, I mean, you have access to Houdini, right? Like Houdini has really good cloth simulation, even though I never used it before. So just do that. I think you would just bring in like a base asset that you can use as a collision and then make your cloth into Houdini and then you're done. Right? So that would be my advice, since that's probably what you're most familiar with. That would be my approach. I mean, just in general, simulations, right? Like, simulations for this kind of stuff are probably king. So, yeah, I would just do that in a simulation. And then, oh, because you're probably asking about, like, the way to approach it, as in texturing-wise, right? I would just bake that down. Like, make the canopy like its own thing, kind of bake it down as a unique thing. Again, this depends on how much detail you want to have in there, right? So let's have a look at some of the ref. We have it. Thank you so much for posting all your ref as well, by the way, Mishla. That's really helpful. I don't think we necessarily have ref for this one though, but that's all good. It depends, right? Like, if you really want to see, like, all the folds in the cloth and all that stuff, then, yeah, you would probably bake it down. You could get away with a tileable, but I would probably do it unique. And then add some branding to the lip as well. Just make it look nice. So, yeah. Simulating it into Houdini, using that as a high poly mesh, baking it down into a low poly, then texturing it. I don't know. I don't know how far we're gonna go. Maybe you need two on the same sheet. Maybe this is like a unique texture just purely for the cloth. Like for like the whole canopy. That could also be an approach. Yeah. That's the way that I would approach it. Great stuff though, Mishla. This is nice. I like where you're heading, you know? Like all these little bits, like all the experimentations with the trim sheet, they're starting to look really nice. So, great job on the trim sheets. Great work. I feel like a teacher. Like an actual school teacher, you know, where they stamp your homework. Yeah, great work. Okay. Moving on. Next up, we have Casper. Casper's making a car jack. And Tim already gave like a whole bunch of great suggestions. So, awesome job, Tim. Thank you so much for helping out. Let me actually read what was said here, right? For the unwrap, definitely do the unwrap yourself. Blah, 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 blah. Edge counts, okay. Yeah, edge counts is a good pointer. See, inside the painter you can use a many material, blah, blah, blah. Yep. All good stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna keep it to something different, right? Like I'm gonna try to give like a little bit of different advice. And my advice is gonna start with a question, really. Because you say that you're currently done with modeling. I'm currently stuck on the UV unwrapping. Should I unwrap it myself or use a smart unwrap? Oh, yes, that is exactly what I wanted to bring it up. So you mentioned, does this model need a high poly? Yes. Like, that was my main thing that I wanted to bring up, is everything that you're doing unique, especially when you're working with like a stereotypical game workflow, make a low poly. Make a high poly. That was exactly the thing that I was gonna bring up. And the way you would do that is you would make your high poly first, and then reduce your high poly again to make a low poly of it. So the thought behind that is that you make all the nice shapes and like all the stuff that you need for the model to look nice, have that in the high poly, and then strip it out to like a lower polygon count. Like you basically just duplicate the asset, right? And then you strip down like all the stuff that you don't need to low poly. So your workflow would look something like this. So high poly, duplicate the asset. That is going to be your low poly. And then reduce the low poly to something. There's no set count, right? There's no set count as to like what kind of polygon count you need to take into account. I would probably reduce it to where you don't necessarily have. Let me put that differently. You're not sacrificing on the silhouette of the object without putting in too many details, right? So what that means, if we have a look at your topology, something in terms of like the density of this guy, like this little section. Let me actually have a look, right? So something like that, maybe a little bit denser. That would be like the goal. And you apply that to like the rest of the object, right? So that means that this is probably going to be too dense. Wait, what? Mishta is saying, I had to go away for a bit and I see I missed my feedback. I'll go over it really quick and ask if I have any questions still, if that's okay. Yeah, please do so. Yeah, so that means that this is too dense. And what matters in poly count, so poly count is silhouette. Well, that's the most important thing. Because let's say you add like a whole bunch of stuff here, right? Like let's say you have like, I don't know what kind of geometry I'm drawing here. But let's say you have like a whole bunch of stuff here. Right? Let's say you have something like this here. That is not adding to the silhouette. So you can easily just remove that by like, well, in this case, just removing all the edges, right? Or what you would do sometimes is you would optimize it, right? You would have, let's say, you would have like 3 edges. You could collapse them down to like 1 edge, doing something like this, right? So we go from 3 to 1. That's just one example, right? There's countless examples, but you would try to optimize as much as you can. But yeah, definitely high poly, duplicating it, and then getting the low poly by reducing the duplicated version of it. And then the next thing would be baking. Yeah, so Casper, how do you make it go from high to low? I understand how to make it go from low to high, I think. Oh, how you model from high to low? Okay, so what would be a good way to explain that? You know what? Let me, because I can explain it, right? I'll give you like a quick intro to it. But I think it's better that I refer you to some tutorials out there, because you're gonna be looking at like the whole workflow and how to like model stuff and like how to model for like a high poly rather than a low poly, right? But like the gist of it is you have your low poly model, and in Blender what you do is you would then add like a bevel modifier, right? So this is the easiest way of doing it, right? Like the whole process is you would kind of have your low poly object plus a bevel modifier. Bevel only the edges that need it, like bevel only the sharp edges, right? So like all these edges, like you want them to feel rounded, right? Because what you're doing is you're basically baking those bevels down from your high poly onto your low poly that doesn't have those bevels anymore, right? So you're kind of baking it down to give the impression that the bevel is still there. That's what we're doing with the high to low poly workflow. And then in this case, once you kind of have what you're gonna see is that once you add your bevel modifier on it, you might need to add like geometry here and there to make sure that the bevel looks consistent among all the edges. So you might have to add like additional geometry in certain cases. And that's where I'm gonna refer you to the tutorial, like, or a tutorial online that I'll find. Like I'll make a note of it and I'll share it after the stream. Because unfortunately I don't really have time to go into like the whole workflow here. I'll make sure to share something. Like, where's my marker? Whatever. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's in short, that's like that's the most important thing. That's also why I suggested starting with something really simple, right? Because this workflow is something that you really need to nail down, because it's at the core of everything, right? Even if you're not doing like unique assets, like you're gonna use baking for tileable textures or for trim sheets or anything like that. So you need to know how to model high poly stuff, even if you're baking it down to like a plane. So yeah, Like that was my main thing that I wanted to bring up. Like the high poly needs to come first. What were some of the other questions as well? Yeah, I think Tim kind of mentioned some of those, right? Where getting started in Substance Painter to build up like materials. Yep. I would, yeah. I'm not going to add too much more to this, right? But like the baking workflow is crucial. That's a must. So yeah, as I said before, like what you normally would do is you have a low poly, then you add a bevel modifier, and you make sure that the bevel is kind of consistent on all the edges. Once you kind of have that, you have a high poly that you made. Oh, well, there's another thing here. A bevel modifier, and then also a subdivision modifier. But a tutorial is going to explain this way better than I can. Or like more in depth at least. And those two are going to make your asset look like nice and smooth. And then once you have like all those nice smooth bevels, you can then use both your high poly that has a bevel and a subdivision modifier on it. And then use that as a high poly to bake that down onto the low poly that doesn't have the bevel modifier and the subdivision modifier on it. Right? Cool, but I'll make sure to send you some resources after to kind of help you along the way. Cool. Yep, but that's about it. I don't think there's too much that I can add here. I think, yeah, that's the most important thing here, Casper. So I'm just gonna send you some resources. If there's any questions that you want, if there's any questions that you want, like I'll be here every Wednesday, so feel free to ping me a message, you know, or add like an update to your WIP chat with like, hey, does this high poly look good? And I'll gladly give you some advice then. Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for putting up your work, Casper, and good luck. Removing supporting edges from the high poly is the most of the work to go from the high to low. Yeah, sometimes there kind of are ways around it, right? This is the thing, like there's so many ways of building a high poly because there's also like the ZBrush polish workflow, which is like really nice, but you kind of need to know what you're doing with your low poly to make it look really nice. So yeah, I would definitely start out with like the most tedious approach, right? Where you have like a bevel modifier and then you add in like extra support edges like Glenn was saying, to kind of make the high poly look good. Thanks. No worries. Thank you so much for putting up your work. Next up, we have Tim. Tim, why are you doing this to me? I'm not good at weapons, man. Let's have a look. We should actually collect like a bunch of weapon stuff and just ask Will for feedback on this. Maybe he'll sit in one day. That would be awesome. Yeah, I like the material variation here. Yeah, man, I would say if I have to point something out, like this feels pretty generic. Well, like, what's a better way of saying this? Like, it's too uniform, right? It's almost like they have the exact same length, like they have the exact same spread, and like It doesn't feel like not exact, right? But pretty close to. That feels like it's like really uniform, or makes it feel really uniform. Like this sort of damage. I think maybe what I'll say is missing some like missing some high level color variation. With that, I mean like in the base metal, right? Like it's pretty uniform now, but yeah, I don't know. Like it kind of, man, I don't even know if this is gonna pick up on stream at all. Like you kind of have like subtle variations in the base color, right? Where I'm almost seeing like a little splotch that is like a little bit lighter than the rest. Let me remove my drawing. It's like there is some subtle variation going on there, right? Then also, I don't know. Let's see if that's present. Guess that's kind of it. I was also kind of looking at some of this stuff, right? Where you have like very subtle roughness variation. Like on the edges. Like it's pretty uniform. But I guess that's some of the stuff that's happening here. Kind of hard to tell with this angle as well, of course. Could make the buttons more used. The red dot looks like you would have to press on the buttons to turn it on. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good shout. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, it kind of depends on how used you want to go, because that might be a good shout. Like, slight more use. Yeah, honestly, don't really have that much more to add on this, Tim. You know where this goes. It's not my thing. So I'm probably just gonna keep it there. Yeah, I like this though. I think my gut feeling is just that there needs to be like a lot more like very subtle variation, right? Like really layering up like the variation, like in a very subtle way, like slightly different colors, like slightly slight variation in like the edge damage, like slight variation in like everything, right? But like everything, to me, everything seems to be like kind of needs to be at like, I don't know, like 2 to 5% opacity, right? And then making like a bunch of those layers, that is where the magic happens. But yeah, that would be my gut feeling. It's looking hella nice though. Yeah, it definitely does. Feel nice. Also like the presentation behind it, you know? Very nice. Yeah, it's like I don't know, like it's like a bunch of this stuff, right? Where this is kind of slightly pushed in, like this little screw, and then there's like a little bit of dirt on here, like a little bit of oil or something like that. And then this is like slightly pushed up, ever so slightly. Like it's all like very, very tiny stuff, right? And you can kind of see that there's like a little bit of like an edge difference. But of course that's on the metal, right? And like all the other stuff feels kind of clean. But I guess you kind of have that going on here as well, right? Where you have like, I don't know, like slight edge variation. Same here as well. Yeah. Those are my 2 cents, Tim. Thank you so much for posting your work. If you ever need dedicated feedback, you know, maybe just ask Will. I'm pretty sure that Will is always keen to talk about guns. Thanks for putting up your work. Okay. Next up, we got Populous. Let's have a look at your work. Another week, another update. A whole bunch of text. Let's have a look. A bunch of new stuff that came into the scene, like we're seeing here, like a bunch of new assets. I feel like this is an okay place for them, but if you have any suggestions otherwise, I'm more than happy to hear them. No, I think if you think it's in an okay place, then like the thing there, well, what's important is that you push everything to the same level, right? And then you reevaluate, and then maybe push it up, and then reevaluate, and then maybe push it all up. Like that's the way that I would approach it. So, and right now, like this stuff is pretty consistent with some of the other stuff, right? So, I think that's nice. I have made a simple cloud shader following the tutorial, but I'm still pretty lost. I use a material applied to a cube in this scenario with a volume shader in Unreal, but I can't quite get the cloudy, roundish feel. I also don't know how to have clouds that are quite up close, right? But what you could do, well, I've never done it, right? So where I would probably start is to look into the volumetric clouds, like the stuff that you have here, right? And see maybe if you can add that material to a cube or to anything else. That's what I would try. I would try to kind of hack it in the beginning. That's where I would start. But yeah, I don't really have like a concrete idea, so I would also just be looking at tutorials at this point. I've never really done any like cloud setup myself, especially with volume shaders, right? Never really experimented with those. We do have a workshop that kind of, it's more 2D-ish. So I don't know how helpful that is. Maybe you could look at that. 4 easy blueprints from Cairo Goodbrand. Has a section on 2D volumetric shaders. So that would be one that I would point you towards. On a final note, I've been tripping up about my UVs for some time now, and is there any chance you could take a quick look at them? Yeah, sure. That's why I added them here. So that's the door. I'm kind of having a look. Because I'm thinking... It's kind of hard to tell, right? Like what I would suggest for the next time, right? I'm gonna take a look at it now. Is I kind of want to see your model next to it. Like if you want to have like a thorough review of your UVs, like I kind of want to have like your model right next to it. Maybe even with like your seams or your hard edges or something like that. So now I'm kind of having to guess, right? So that would be my advice for the next time. What I'm thinking is that I think you might have laid that entire thing. Is that right? The main thing that I'm thinking here is that these strips, right, they all come from like the sideline, and what you could actually do is make that just like one or two like really long strips and have them like on the side here. Instead of having like multiple UV islands, right? And also that's probably where like this curve comes in. I would also try to straighten stuff up as much as you can. Because I can't really see... anything else? Yeah, that would be my gut instinct. There might also be something going on here where the high poly still has like hard edges. How do you straighten those UVs though? It depends on the program, right? Like in Blender, I use Quadrify. But what you can do is, man, how did I do it in Maya? I don't know what the tool is called anymore. But like you could select like one edge and then tell it to straighten that edge, right? So you would have one straightened edge, pin it, and then relax the rest of it so that it becomes like attached to your straightened selection. That's also a way. In Blender, I use Quadrify Mesh from, I think a lot of plugins have it. I'm using ZenUV, that has a pretty good quadrification in it. Align or straighten UV. Thank you so much, Anna. It's great to see you here. Unitize in Maya. Straighten one quad and then follow active quads also help you make straight strips. Yep, that's also a great suggestion. Thank you so much, Bulborb. Align or straighten Maya. Yeah, that might also work. Honestly, it's been so long since I worked in Maya, right? So, yep, Blender. Bulborb is saying that that's for Blender. 100%. Yeah, there are so many ways of straightening that stuff out, right? Like aligning this one edge so that it's straight, and then pinning that edge, and then like relaxing the other stuff could also work. Quadrifying, straightening one quad and then follow active quads, also a good suggestion. Thank you so much for all the suggestions, people. That's awesome. But yeah, the same can be applied here, right? This entire section. Because if you do that, and let's say this takes up like this amount of space, right? Which might be true. Maybe it's a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. This is like all the space you've saved, right? We're just straightening like a couple of islands out. And there's, if you want to be really nitpicky, there's probably other opportunities where you can kind of puzzle stuff together. What I would do, I'm not a fan of manual packing. I know that Will's gonna hate me for this. But I would probably look into like Packmaster. I can't remember if that's free or not. It might be. But there's other tools, right? Like packing add-ons. It can really help you save a lot of time. Like UV packers. But yeah, the end result, like the sculpts look really nice. UV Packmaster 3 is free, I think. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Maddie. I think it is. I think at least one of them is free because last time I was playing around with it, I think they were free. But yeah, definitely straighten those sections out. The rest of it looks pretty good though. Like in terms of coverage, right? Like in terms of the amount, the percentage amount that you're covering up your UVs looks really nice. The only thing that I would say is have space. Have, well, the correct term, not space, padding. Because that padding is going to be very important when you're doing MIP mapping, which is basically like lower resolution versions that like an engine will automatically generate for your textures, right? So based on distance, and the less padding you have, or like if you're just really close to them, like you might introduce bleed, where your texture from like one island, like one section, might actually pixelate and like bleed onto another section. So you have to kind of be careful about that too. So yeah, there is, I don't know them by hand, but if you want to look for correct padding, like there are like, what is it? Padding recommendations, like the amount of padding. Let me see if I can get this right. This is all so long ago since I did like a unique prop. I think the amount of padding becomes less. Oh no, becomes more depending on the high resolution of the texture, right? That wouldn't make sense, I guess. Yeah, something to keep in mind as well, having padding between like all the different islands of your UV. Let me just have a quick Google. UV padding. Edge padding. Thanks, poly count. Let's have a look. Yep, so this talks about like textured padding as well. Where if you have like no pixel padding, right? Like if you don't have like extra pixels outside of your textures, then what's going to happen with like lower MIPs, it's going to pixelate and basically revert to like black, right? Like the material in the back of it. So yeah, make sure that you keep that in mind as well. Yeah, cool. I think that was it, Populous. Thank you so much for posting your work. Oh, wait, no, there was one more thing that I wanted to add. A suggestion from my side. Like, this stone looks really nice, right? What I would do is I would almost, like, cover this thing with them as well. Right, so that the base is pure stone. And it links to the door as well. Like it kind of blends into the door a little bit better. Yeah, that was my final suggestion. Thank you so much for putting up your work. And looking forward to seeing it next week, Populous. Keep up the great work. You're doing awesome. Like these assets are looking really nice. Really nicely textured as well. Thank you so much for all the tips. No worries. And yeah, thanks to the chat as well for pitching in and giving all the good suggestions too. Awesome. Thank you. Then, next up, we got Maddie. Current progress shot so far. I started working on the materials for my scene. Very basic material pass. I want to make sure that the base colors are correct and then add more detail. They're both made in Substance Designer. However, I plan to make the brick walls and Substance road surface as well. With a combination of ZBrush and Designer. Yeah, cool. Very basic material pass. Yeah, this is coming along nice. I'm not going to give any feedback then. Keep doing what you're doing. Make sure that all the materials are kind of in place. See that they all kind of match together somehow, right? I think that's a very good like first step. Just to get like consistency between the whole scene. Definitely a good shout. Yeah, thank you for posting your work. There's no direct feedback here, right? Just keep it up. Next up, we've got Route 1. Or, well, Maddie, let me know if you want any specific feedback, right? Because there was nothing in the post itself. Feel free to post last minute. Before diving into Route 1 stuff, I think I kind of missed like all the stuff from Mishla. Thank you so much. Great feedback. The reason why one trim sheet has one material half in it is because the part I want to use for the wall part, the window modules. Yep, I love the idea of a decal sheet. Didn't think of it. Or decal atlas. That's for sure. I'm going to approach it. I hope I will have all my assets finally done and iterated upon next week. No worries. Great stuff. And Maddie is also saying, I'm good for now. Thank you. No worries, Maddie. Thank you for pitching in. All right. Route 1. Let's have a look. Feedback on the current WIP on the following aspects. General advice. I would greatly appreciate any suggestions to enhance the overall scene and elevate its professional appearance. I'm seeking guidance on how to effectively imbue the scene with a festive ambience, making it appear more realistic and vibrant party setting. I'm interested in finding ways to get the most effective approach to present the scene in order to maximize its potential. I think the presentation here is pretty good, right? Like, keep iterating on the scene, I would say. There's definitely stuff that needs to be improved on, like the ambience and like the festive setting itself, right? But like all the stuff that I'm seeing here it's going into the right direction. What I would definitely say is, like you said, right? It's very hard to tell festive from battle. Like, I don't know. Like it's kind of like a weird mix, you know? And I wouldn't say it's like either or. Like it's kind of like neither at the moment, if you know what I mean. Like we have some indications. I'll explain what I mean. Like we definitely have some indications of like a battle. Right? Which is cool. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily a battle that's being fought now, right? Because I know that you kind of had this idea at a certain point where they were getting drunk, they were feasting, and then like a battle erupted. I don't think that's the idea anymore, if that's the intention. Now it feels more like the battle's been done, you're coming in, and they're having a feast, right? What I would definitely say is to enhance the feeling of them actually feasting is, what are they feasting about, right? Like, that's the main thing. And the reason why I say so is because I see that you're adding in like the beginnings of that, but I think you need to level it up to the next level. Where you have like a couple of gold coins here, right? There's like a chest with some gold coins here as well. What I would say is like I'm missing like the stuff that makes it blatantly obvious that they just ripped like a whole church to pieces, right? Like I want to see like chalices or like goblets, like gold chains. Basically, I'm looking for excuses to make like big stuff, right? Like a gold chalice or like a gold goblet that's like very striking and doesn't also fit in with the normal stuff that they have, right? So that's gonna immediately like strike like what is it, like a contrast between the two. So I would just say it sounds so generic, but that's how I would approach it. Like I want to focus on big gold stuff. Like what can I put there that's going to be an immediate link to like a church or whatever they pillaged that they're currently celebrating over, right? Because the coins are nice, but like if you look at the grand scheme of things, right? Like you're not really gonna see the gold. Like if I remove this circle, like I don't know, there might be something on the table, but it might also be nuts. You know? So I would really focus on like the big stuff, you know? Like the big stuff that's gonna make an impact. And then kind of go crazy. Kind of go crazy with it. Like make it like a really decked out hall, right? But like focus more on like the different rugs, have like bigger chests, like have massive chests with like massive piles of gold. Like I would almost like, I don't know, scale this up by 200% almost, and make sure that people are seeing that as well. And then maybe I was kind of thinking that maybe you could grab one of those chests and like put them closer as well. Right? Like maybe, how are we going to do that? Like where do you want to put that? Or, maybe. Maybe what you do instead is you have one of those smaller chests on the table. Right? And this is just overflowing with like gold coins, and like this has like chalice, like a chalice in it as well. Like a goblet, like a chalice, like all that kind of stuff is in here as well. And then this gives me a reason to believe like, oh, this is what they're celebrating about, right? Because it's not hidden in the back somewhere. Like they are really looking at it like, hey, look, this is our prize. Bam, put it on the table. And then put it front and center, right? And then have like, again, scale this up like 200%. Make it real obvious, right? Why they're feasting and what they're feasting about. And then you could potentially do some interesting stuff where, I don't know, maybe that's a little bit on the nose. But like you could almost have, I could almost imagine like a monk like holding on to their prized possessions, whatever is in here, right? Like maybe it's like a very important relic that these Vikings have absolutely no idea about, but it's like a very important relic to like the church, right? And you could put that like front and center in this like really ornate box, and then you could kind of see like the bloody handprints of like a monk like trying to not let it go, but like, I mean, he lost his life over it, right? Like you could kind of see like bloody like handprints over the chest. So we have like this main chest, focal point, right? Give us something to look at. Put the monk's head inside of the chest. I mean, that could definitely be a story. That could definitely be a story. It depends on how gruesome you want to go, you know? Also, crucifixes, rosary beads, yeah, anything that can like link to the church, right? I would look at it this way, right? Like I would put something like real important. I would put that in this chest. And then like the other stuff, the other loot, right? Whatever you want to make kind of goes in here, but I would definitely have like one prized possession that looks fancy, but then you don't really, these Vikings don't really have an idea about it, right? So it's just sitting there. Gotta say, love that wood. The values are so crisp. Yeah. Yeah, and also like the little additions, right? Like with the little pools here. Super nice. Anna is also saying, I think it could be fun to have the chest flipped on its side with the gold spilling out of it. It could show how the Vikings are on a spending spree. Yeah, that could also be it, right? Like that they kind of just neglected it. Like they kind of put it on here and it was kind of like, oh, okay, time to feast. Like they kind of push it on the side, but maybe there's still like, I don't know, like a chalice that they're drinking out or like an important relic, right? Could also be a really good idea. That's awesome. But yeah, it's definitely gonna be what you want, right? Like the way that I always look at is, and I mean, everyone's probably tired of me saying this, but I'm looking for contrast, right? Like contrast in every sort of way that I can get it. Like the contrast between fancy and mundane, right? Like I'm gonna add it here, right? Like contrast between like mundane and valuable. Right? That could be like a very striking context, like a very striking contrast, right? Because then we're looking at like this generic Viking stuff. And then all of a sudden in the middle of it is like, oh, there's like this chest full of valuables. Like, what was that doing there? And it gets the brain pumping, right? It gives us something to think about, and then we can kind of go off and like make our own story and like look for clues to the actual story that's happening. Should I change the floor to a massive plane and blend it out with an alpha? Hmm. That is a good question. I would say you don't necessarily need to, and the reason why I say that is because I feel like you have all of the components to make this into a full scene. And with a full scene, I don't mean that you need to go crazy and have multiple camera points and all that stuff, right? What I mean with a full scene is kind of keep the focus on the stuff that's already here, but you could maybe make like the wall out of like a single plank and then like planks that stand up that way, right? And maybe like another plank that way. That could be like the wall on this side. You have a table. Maybe you can rotate it, right? Like give it a different value. Maybe change the model ever so slightly. Duplicate it over here where it's like partially hidden in the dark. What we're trying to do with that is maybe give the impression that the scene is way bigger than it is. But this is a very personal thing, right? Like if you're like, hey, look, I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend like all those additional time making it bigger. The alpha is definitely like a good option as well. So I think you're in this weird space where it's like one of two options, right? Like the scene, let's call it scene options. Number one is like commit and be smart with reuse. Or number two is scale down and opacity, right? Those are the two ways that I currently think about. Also blending everything together, nothing much stands out. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like that was the issue that was currently happening, is that everything feels kind of mundane. And like that mundanity like doesn't give us anything to focus and to latch onto, right? So yeah, that chest in the middle, boonk, is going to give us a nice focal point. It indicates a story. You have like a bunch of chests in the background, like literally pouring gold, a bunch of chalices, you know, like all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you have to overdo it a little bit. Yeah, and definitely think about the scale as well. Right? Like the scale of these coins and the scale of those chests. Like what I'm imagining is I'm role playing, right? Like burly Viking dudes that are just coming in, like each carrying a chest of like, I don't know, like 150 kilograms, you know? Just lugging that shit in with like, and if they put it down, like the chalices and like all the gold just pours out and they don't care because they're too busy thinking about like all the beer they're gonna drink, right? Like all the meat they're gonna drink. Like, it's such a ridiculous thing, right? But that's that stupid background story that I was just talking about. Like that can inform so much, right? Like them slamming down chests onto the floor. Like there's gonna be chests like Anna was saying, right? That are gonna be flipped over, gold spilling all over the floor. Maybe it damaged the floor. Maybe some chests broke in two. Like you could do like a bunch of cool stuff with that. You condense this down to just one image. Yeah, but definitely have that focal point in there. And again, like be smart, right? Like making one chalice, like scaling the coins up. What I would do is I would have, so ridiculous, I would have a chest, I would use it as a collision and then just rain money on it. Like I would have, I don't know, like a bunch of coins just raining on that chest with like a simulation in Blender, right? So that it kind of falls naturally. And yeah, that's what I would do. What about a hand chopped off that's still clinging to the chest with goods? Man, Populous, you have some dark stuff in your head. But hey, more props to you, man. If you wanna, that could still be like a way to go with the scene, right? Like make it really macabre and like really, I don't know, really over the top. Yep. Sometimes it do be like that. Yeah, I hope that helped, the right one. Wait, let me back up, right? Like I'm seeking advice how to effectively imbue the scene with festive ambience. That's kind of what we talked about, right? And that kind of goes into like general advice that I wanted to give as well. And I'm interested in finding ways to get the most effective approaches to present this scene in order to maximize its potential for securing work opportunities. I mean, the only thing that you can do is make it as good as you can and then let the work do the talking. When it comes to that, obviously, like when we get to like the final presentation on your portfolio, there's still some thinking that has to go in it and you need to present it well, right? But what I'm seeing here with the lighting that you currently have and the way that you've been approaching the presentation of it, I'm not too concerned at this point. I think you're in a very good spot. It's just mainly the scene and the story that kind of needs to be brought up to the next level, right? Like the actual presentation is actually really nice. So keep that up and you're good. Okay, last one of today. A Vibhu. Let's have a look. Where are you? Here you are. Finish my block out. Just wanted feedback on the environment and the following. Do you feel the drapery in the center covers too much of the environment? If so, how would you have me do another rendition of it? Yeah, exactly, Anna. Yeah, I think there might be a hint in there where maybe, I don't know. I'm making an assumption here, right? Like maybe Populous is just really done with cutesy stuff and wants to go on like a really, really dark setting with like his next environment. Hey man, I just noticed you missed my trim sheet I have made. Let's have a look. Populous. Well, what I would say next time is ask me specifically for that, because sometimes it's really hard for me to know what people want out of this, right? So make sure that I have like a nice list of like, hey, I want feedback on my trim sheet, I want feedback on this. Like you did with the UVs, right? That was perfect. So we'll have a look at that next time. Back to Vibhu. First question. Let's have a look. So the drapery in the center covers too much of the environment. I don't think so. Like, the drapery question is more a question of, is this actually how the stuff is done in real time? Real time. Oh my god, I need to get out of 3D. In real life? Because that's the most important part, right? Is... if that is accurate to life, or like representable of what you want to do with the environment, right? That's the main thing that matters there, really. I don't really care that it covers up like a whole section of the top, right? Because let's be honest, the top is more like an additional thing anyway, right? So I would actually see it more as an opportunity rather than something that's getting in the way of stuff. Because with an opportunity, I mean that if you have a shot like this, that means that you don't have to set dress like this entire section of the second floor, right? If you're doing static shots, of course. But that's, yeah, I don't really think it takes away too much. It actually works really nice as like a visual guidance point. Actually quite nice. Second question, do you feel the assets on the lower floor are overused or crowded? Lower floor. Honestly, Vipu, I feel like we talked about that last time. No? I feel like we talked about that last time where the density of it was just too all over the place. And wait, what? Emojis? What? Whoever has been exchanging these emojis with the entire stream, thank you. What? I can't even see emojis. Never mind. Yeah, so Vibu, I feel like we talked about that last time, right? With like the density of like the assets on the bottom floor. So I would just say like look at that video because I feel like the density kind of still is the same. I would still like to, as a short recap, is working clusters more, right? That was the main thing from last time, is like working clusters, and number 2 was giving areas of rest. Right, so for example, you have like a bench, a bunch of chairs, like another bench, like a bunch of paintings. Like you kind of only want to have like one of these clusters. And then maybe you have some frames over here, right? But then the rest of it, just keep it empty. Just let the scene breathe a little bit. But yeah, more in depth, go look at last week's stream because I feel like we spent a lot of time talking about that. You meant more in terms of assets as in variation. Oh, I see. No, in that terms, they're fine. In that term, they're fine. I don't really see any issue with them. Also, next time, I should do you first. I feel like we're always talking about your work last. Kind of feel bad. Yeah, I don't think that's the real issue. I don't think that. Plus, also, the thing there is currently we're only looking at blockouts, right? And with blockouts, we're not seeing the full picture because it's super easy. Let's say you make a texture of a chair to just tint it slightly different and maybe color one of the cushions that's on like the arms of the chair differently, and you have a different chair, right? You don't actually need to do that much to add additional variation. It's just really hard to imagine that when we're looking at a block out. And then question number 3, I'm struggling with the reception area. I feel it lacks grandeur compared to the rest of the environment. Any tips on how I can make it match the vibe in the rest of the courtyard? Reception area. Pibu, um, do you know what I'm gonna say? And I'm gonna give you some time to reply. Because I think you have a high inclination of what I'm gonna say. Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%. It's not needed. It's also not interesting, right? Like the most interesting part is the courtyard, right? Like this is the stuff I want to see. I want to see this in like all its glory. This looks freaking awesome. I cannot wait to see this. But then if you show me something like this, like it feels as what you just said, right? Like it lacks grandeur compared to the rest of the environment. I feel like it's a good indication to maybe just close this off and not do it, right? Because scope is real. To make this thing look really nice, you're gonna have to put in like a lot of time and a lot of polish. It's not only about like the modularity, right? Because think back at what I said in the beginning of this stream, where making something modular is relatively easy, but making something modular look really interesting and non-modular, that's where like all the hard work comes in, right? And I'm sorry to be so brutal about it, but man, the amount of times that I've personally stopped doing environments because I went too big, like I have a whole hard drive full of them, right? And I know so many more people that also have hard drives full of them. So don't do it. Focus on the main focal point, make that look kick-ass, and that's all you need. Let me see. I'm sure you've seen this as well. I think we even spoke about it in private, Vibu. Oh. It was like a really... I mean, this is also one of them. I'm just looking at some courtyards, right? And there's one Moroccan courtyard that... I can't remember the name of the person that made it. I'm probably not gonna find it really quick. Doesn't matter. There's a bunch of great examples, you know, a bunch of great examples of courtyards, and just look at like what they're doing with it, right? Like I got two examples here. One from Meggy Rock. Look at how nice this looks. And this is just the courtyard. Just the courtyard. Okay, maybe a bit of the second floor. Okay. But I feel like even the second floor you could have cut without any consequences. Like this stuff, I mean, honestly, like the main thing that makes this thing stand out is just like the two statues, right? So, yeah. Courtyard, right? Same here. This is even a single shot, or maybe, yeah, there's a couple more shots, but there's not much happening here, right? I mean, in terms of like density, of course, this is more foliage focused, right? But this is single shot, courtyard, looks nice, executed really well, right? That's what you should aim for, is having something that just like wows people with just like the one shot, and then let them explore that one shot. Because like all the additional stuff, right? I mean, it's nice, but is it crucial to have it in your scene, right? Like the upper floor, I would make that because you're gonna see it, right? But I wouldn't spend too much attention to it. But like the reception area, yeah, 100%. Just cut it. Hi Anna. First time I'm watching it live from Beyond Extent. Could you go over how I can submit WIPs for feedback and how often the streams happen, please? Yes, good question. So they happen every Wednesday. Every Wednesday I do WIP Wednesday. So this is like a recurring event. And anyone that's a part of the community can just add like a little tag on the Discord. So I'll show it off here. So there's like this little tag called WIP Wednesday. And if you tag it like that, I'll go through it. Every week if you want me to. Got it, Tim. Thanks. Yeah, sorry, Vibu. Sorry to be so blunt about it, right? But I feel like it's really crucial that I am so blunt about it. And I'm sorry. This is not like a personal attack, right? Like I just feel so scared when I see people tackling something at this scale because I know where that ends up going. And I don't want you to like get overscoped, right? I'll instead of cutting it, right? Instead of cutting it, even though that would be my first option, is what I would do is close the curtains. Where does this go to? Let's have a look. Let's see. Can we even see it in one of the other shots? I don't think so, right? What I'm gonna say is close the curtains, finish the rest of the scene. If you have if you then get to the end of your environment and the courtyard is looking freaking awesome, right? Open the curtains, make the reception area. Right? But then you already know that, hey, look, I don't care if the reception area gets done or not, because the focus needs to be on the actual thing that matters, and that's the courtyard. That's the way that I would approach it. And then also, like, if you get to that point, where you're like, hey, look, I've done the courtyard. This took a lot of work. I'm really proud of the result. But also, I don't care about doing the reception area. Curtains closed. You can just move on, post it on your art station, and be done with it, right? That's the way that I would approach it. Hey, Rajav. Hopefully I pronounced that right. For real, I am watching this live for the first time and I'm having so much fun. I wanted to ask how to post artwork for review, but I was ashamed, so then someone did it for me. Hey, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question, Anna. I mean, as you can tell, I kind of get into a routine here, right? And I kind of get into the zone a little bit, so I kind of forget that people don't know how to get into this. Populous is saying, getting live feedback and being able to ask questions for your work is so valuable. I knew for the group of quite a while, but it's a long time. Oh my god, I'm just fumbling that sentence. I knew of the group for quite a while and thinking whether I should join, and honestly joining is super worth it. Maybe put like a little Q&A in the live description. That is a great idea, Populous. Let me make a note of that. And don't forget about it. That is awesome. Nice. Okay. Let's have a look. I don't think, was there another question? Yeah, so a final look at the environment. Any changes or things you feel need changing or reworking before I move on to the detailing phase? Thank you for the lovely feedback, Tim. It means a lot. Thank you for putting up your work as well, Vibu. Like, week in, week again. It's been awesome to see develop. Honestly, I love the way that the courtyard looks now. I don't really have any like immediate things that I would change. I kind of think that you kind of hit it on the head when it comes to like the density of assets and like the stuff that needs to be done to make this like a good and full environment, right? I think the foliage and like all these like hanging plants, they're gonna add so much to making to add like a little bit of contrast, right? Because this is a very man-made, like architectural heavy scene, and then you infuse that with foliage. Oh, it's gonna look so good. So I'm excited about this. Yeah, currently no real issues that I would observe or like anything that I would want to fix. Yeah, great stuff, Ibu. Great stuff. You're making awesome progress. I'll say it again, right? Like the progress that we're seeing week on week is freaking amazing. So keep this up. Jesse is also asking a question. Got a question. Do I make a new post when resubmitting the same scene next week, but when adding cool improvements, or use the same thread? Yep. What I do is I take the overpaints that I've been making today. I'll put them in your thread and then remove the tag. So if you then do an update, you can just re-add a tag and I'll look at it again. Yeah, keeping it all in one spot is nice, right? Because then you have like the one consistent thread where you can really see like the progress. Like that's why we do this. Like that's why it's looking... I mean, I like scrolling through these, right? Like just seeing the progress of everyone. It's so awesome to look at it. So yeah. Fibu saying thanks, Tim. No worries. Thank you so much, Fibu, for posting your work as always. Keep up the great work. Yeah, the organization of the whole Discord server is just amazing. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Populous. Awesome. We had so many people today. So many awesome pieces of art that we looked at. You're also talented. Did you know that? Freaking hell. Like the amount of stuff, like the amount of cool stuff that we're seeing on these streams. I don't really say that, huh? But all so talented. I love what I'm seeing here. Today was a long one, huh? Yeah. But I feel like we actually did good on time. Like 2 hours and a half. That was good because normally I just keep talking on about like, I don't know, 4 pieces for like 2.5 hours. So this was good. All right. Talking about the length of it, it is time for me to say bye-bye though. So thanks for taking the time, Tim. No, thank you for being here, Anna. And thanks. That extends to everyone else here, right? Thank you so much for being here all. Thank you so much for putting up your work, enduring my feedback and adding your own feedback as well. Thank you so much. And yeah, when is the next stream? So I'm gonna be doing some more market stuff, I think, on Friday, and then we'll see each other next week Wednesday for another edition of Work in Progress Wednesday. All right, people, have a good evening. Go check out Beyond Extend, and if you haven't been subscribed, just subscribe and like the stream, all that good YouTube stuff. Enjoy your evening and stay creative. Bye bye.